growth has to be balanced against broader issues. We've been talking about this for 20 years, and there have been pioneers who have been doing it even before that. But what's changed at this moment is that the economics have come right to the front in the past 2 or 3 years. Governments have been meeting about reforming the economic system, first of all to stabilize it from things like the banking system, to bring in new concepts such as President Sarkozy is exploring with Stiglitz and that commission which they put in place last year, which is to look at gross national happiness in addition to gross national product. These are real things which are happening. And in the middle of this, they're worried about the development agenda, which jumps to the front when people talk about poverty and subsides when these issues of economics come into play. They're worried about the climate agenda, which is always there with us now because climate changes the game on everything. And my friend Maurice Strong, the father of the Sustainable Development Movement, is saying it's a potential Armageddon if we don't deal with it. It has to come into this game, and that's why leaders are concerned about the climate change discussions, why leaders are concerned at the G20 about getting the economics right, about why the developing countries and the BRICS are coming together to make sure that their position is factored into everything so that they get funds, particularly funds and technical know-how, when this new order of green growth and the green economy is being constructed. Achim Steiner, who has perhaps done more to drive this movement and thinking in recent years, addressing the UN General Assembly 2 or 3 years ago, and I was there representing UNWTO, Achim Steiner said, it's not only about dealing with this issue now, but it's about thinking how to deal with it for the next 40 years, because 2050 is the date when we have to stabilize the global warming by no more than 2 degrees centigrade above the current levels. And when you think of that in a 40-year swatch, and you think about it as a mosaic, as he described it, where every small community is starting from a different position, politically, economically, development-wise, but has to get to the same point in 40 years, you begin to realize the size of this problem. And when you realize you have to change every element of consumption and production and investment, then it's not just a question of somebody saying, and if we stop flying, it'll make a difference. If we all go to ecotourism, it'll make a difference. That is very, very oversimplifying the case. What we have to do as a sector is we have to change and position ourselves right in the forefront of the rest of the society. And that leads me to your second point. What is it that we have to change? And Tom Friedman summed it up brilliantly for me in this book he wrote, Hot, Flat and Crowded. And what he said is, first of all, we have to use less energy from hell, black energy, oil and coal. And we have to use more clean white energy from heaven, renewable, solar, tidal, clean nuclear, biofuels, all of that kind of stuff. And then he said, but if we're to do this in a stable way, we have to have social inclusion. We have to make sure that the poor people, the poor countries, are brought into the game and not left aside. Otherwise the gap gets worse, and one day we have wars as a consequence. The other thing he said is that we need to bring together energy technology and information technology. Because when you're changing the way we do everything, there are zillions of transactions every minute that have to be managed. And we have 40 years to do it, so we have to bring new technology into play. And last but not least, we have to do it in a framework that respects conservation, because inside our world, if we don't have a balance of the species, we've discovered that things get totally out of kilter, and when nature gets out of kilter, whether it's the weather or drought or disease, it trumps everything. So that was also a very important issue. Now, last but not least, why is tourism so important in all of this? It's because we are so huge. Every human being aspires to be a traveler. We touch every part of the planet. We are huge in terms of our contribution to traditional economic measurement like GDP. We are vital to job creation, which is going to be the biggest problem that we're going to have for the next 5 to 10 years around the world. And we can make the change. Our challenges are operating in different ways, understanding and measuring our impacts, changing our practices, getting rid of the bad ones, emphasizing the good ones. And because tourism only happens because you need many parties, but particularly the public and the private sector, because there are some 50 transactions in any single trip involving combinations of both of these parties, you have to make sure that it's undertaken in a way which brings those parties into play at the same time. The key to this is to make sure that we're treated like other sectors. So some of the benefits we have at the moment, like not paying tax on aviation fuel, that has to be resolved. Some of the disbenefits, like governments for avaricious reasons hitting a particular category of people, like travellers, for a tax like the airport tax in the UK, this has to be rationalised and brought into shape. But obviously, and the industry then has to do its part about getting its impacts properly into place along with the rest of society over 40 years and in a very proactive fashion. Now, that's what our report tries to point out, and it tries to suggest that the different actors in the game, the governments, the industry, the airlines, the rest of the tourism value chain, have a real potential to do this at the moment, because the external challenge is bigger than our internal differences, and that if we do begin to put our act together, we can make a real world difference.